You ever look at your dog, just completely passed out on the couch, and think, where did you really come from? I'm not talking about the breeder or the shelter, but the deep, ancient story of how we got dogs in the first place. Well, today we're going to unpack that incredible journey, the one that turned a wild predator into our best friend. And let's just start with the biggest, most obvious puzzle in the entire dog world. How is it possible that a massive Great Dane and a tiny little Chihuahua, how can they both come from the exact same ancestor? I mean, they look like they're from different planets, right? Well, that mind-boggling diversity is actually the key to this whole story. This wasn't just a fun question for dog owners. For scientists, this was a huge debate that went on for decades. The idea that one single wild animal could produce all the different dog breeds we see today, it just seemed, impossible to a lot of people. And this led them down two very different paths. So on one hand, you had the polyphyletic theory. Think of it like a melting pot idea. It suggested that to get all this variety, dogs must have come from a mix of wild animals. Wolves, sure, but also jackals, maybe even coyotes. On the other hand, you had the monophyletic theory, which is way simpler, just one source. It argues that every single dog traces its lineage back to one wild ancestor. So, which one is it? A wild animal cocktail or a single straight line? For the longest time, nobody knew for sure. But thanks to the power of modern genetics, that debate is officially over. The science is in, and the evidence is, it's definitive. Yep, the science came down hard on one side. That monophyletic single source idea, it won. Every single dog, from a poodle to a pit bull, is a direct descendant of the gray wolf. In fact, they're technically the same species, just a subspecies. Their scientific name, Canis lupus familiaris, literally translates to the familiar wolf. How cool is that? And what's really amazing is we can even pinpoint when this all started. By comparing the DNA of modern dogs and wolves, scientists have created what they call a molecular clock. Basically, they can count the tiny genetic changes that build up over thousands of years. And that clock tells us that the ancestors of our dogs split off from ancient wolf populations somewhere between 27,000 and 40,000 years ago. That's the moment our story really kicks off. But even after science pointed the finger directly at the wolf, the mystery wasn't totally solved. There were still these nagging little clues that just didn't seem to fit, things that kept that old debate alive for years. And this gets us to the really big question. Okay, we know who the ancestor was, but how on earth did a wild wolf become a dog? Right, so how did this incredible transformation happen? How do you go from a fearsome predator to a friendly pet? Well, there are two main ideas that try to explain exactly that. And these two theories are really different. The classic idea, active domestication, is probably what you'd guess. Our ancient ancestors went out, grabbed some wolf cubs, and deliberately tamed and bred them. But there's this other, more modern theory called self-domestication, and it totally flips that script. It suggests the wolves actually took the first step themselves. Now, to get this self-domestication idea, you have to understand a concept called flight distance. It's basically an animal's personal space bubble. For most wild wolves, that bubble is huge. They are not letting a human get anywhere near them. But just like in any population, there's variation. Some wolves were just naturally born a little bit bolder, a little less scared than the others. So here's how it probably went down. Step 1, early human settlements create a brand new, super convenient food source, their garbage piles. Step 2, only the boldest wolves, the ones with that smaller flight distance, dared to get close enough to snack on the leftovers. And then step 3, over generations, natural selection just did its thing. The tamer wolves got more food, they survived better, they had more babies, and they passed on those tame genes. In a way, the wolves basically tamed themselves by adapting to us. This whole process didn't just change how a wolf acted, it fundamentally rewired its brain and reshaped its body. The transformation was just profound. It happened inside and out. Okay, get ready for this number. Compared to a wolf of the exact same body size, a domestic dog's brain is over a third smaller. 34% smaller. That is one of the most dramatic changes scientists have seen in any domesticated animal. And why? Well, because living with humans meant they could kind of outsource a lot of the heavy-duty brain work needed for survival. And this brings us right back to one of those confusing clues from before. For years, people pointed to this smaller brain size as evidence for jackal ancestry. since jackals naturally have smaller brains than wolves. It's a perfect example of a scientific red herring, a clue that seemed important but actually led everyone down the wrong path until genetics finally cleared things up.
So what other changes happened? Well, one of the biggest ideas here is something called neoteny. It's a fancy word, but it just means that we selected for animals that kept their juvenile, puppy-like features, even as adults. Think about it. Floppy ears, shorter snouts, being super playful and submissive. Those are all things you see in a wolf cub, not a full-grown adult wolf.
And this is absolutely key to our entire relationship with dogs. By keeping these puppy-like traits, dogs stay dependent on us and trainable by us their whole lives. An adult wolf grows up and becomes an independent, self-sufficient member of its pack. But an adult dog, it forever looks to its human for guidance and approval, just like a puppy looks to its mom.
And the changes just go on and on. Take barking. A wolf might give a short bark as an alarm, but a dog's persistent barking is a totally new form of communication. A female wolf goes into heat once a year, like clockwork. Most female dogs, twice a year. It's a fundamental shift from an independent pack animal to a dependent companion.
So when you start to put all these pieces of the puzzle together, the genetic split from the wolf, the self-domestication process, and all of these profound changes to their bodies and brains, you end up with a really remarkable conclusion about that animal sleeping at the foot of your bed. The process was so powerful, it didn't just tame the wolf. It actually created something brand new. It created a species whose entire biology, its whole reason for being, is defined by this ancient, unbreakable partnership with us. From a wild hunter of the plains to a member of the family. That is the incredible, unlikely story of the dog.